And now, the Morgan Thomas Show, brought to you by Black's Tire Inc.
Here we go, another Wednesday night. It's July 10th, episode 28, the Morgan Thomas Show. I am your host and producer, Morgan Thomas. Joining me is not joining me is Alan Adams. He's out on vacation this week, and joining me tonight is my very special guest from The Ring, host of The Ring, and also host of the Mark Childress Show on Saturdays, WCCP. Mark Childress, welcome to the show, Mark.
What's up, Morgan, man? Honored to be here, dude. I'm excited about the show tonight.
Well, I'm happy to have you. I'm a little disappointed. I know the fans are a little bit disappointed that Alan's not here. And I'm also a little disappointed I didn't get you a cool ESPN background. So maybe next time you come on the show, I promise to get you a cool ESPN studio.
You'll have to deal with my Clemson Tiger picture behind me for tonight. But we'll make do, man. We'll make do.
Well, it's looking good. Thank you for joining. We got a great show for you tonight. We're going to discuss the Clemson men's basketball team playing in Italy. Not only just playing in Italy, but doing really well. And they're about to go to the gold medal game tomorrow night, so that's exciting. We're going to talk about two players that we want to see shine this season on the football team. Another thing that's been going around some of the discussion forums is what happens if Tavien Feaster doesn't graduate. We're going to talk about that at halftime. That's going to be our little fun halftime talk. Then our topic number 3 and 4. 3 will be who's tougher. Some people are saying Syracuse. It's a tougher game this year for Clemson. Some people are saying Texas A&M, which is the one that most people believed in the preseason would be the toughest one. But there's a little bit of a debate out there, so I wanted to give it a little run on the show. And then finally, I brought Mark in to be part of our fun top 5 that we always do, top 5 lists. And we don't go over the list beforehand. So Mark doesn't know my list. I don't know his list. We're going to talk about the top 5 coaches who have frustrated Dabo the most over his career. And what I mean by that is, coaches that have really played him tough or maybe kind of annoyed him by the way that they play or the way that they coach or maybe how they act off the field. So there's a lot of criteria there. There's not many coaches that frustrate Dabo anymore with the great record that he has, but I thought it would be interesting. So I'm glad to have you. Looks like we have about 20 people watching. So some of us, if you're not friends with us on Facebook, we might not be able to see your name in the chat. So please put your name in the chat. Let us know that you're here. Tell us Go Tigers. We'll give you a shout out. If you have any questions, concerns, emotional outbursts, please let them be known in the comments. We'll be more than happy to discuss them on the show. We don't want to make it about just us talking. We want to talk with you too. We want to give you a voice as well. But remember, tonight's show is brought to you by Black's Tire Inc., Westminster, South Carolina. Family owned and operated. I've used them since 1971. Well, I haven't used them since 1971, but they've been around since 1971. If you need new tires, brakes, alignments, tire repair, or just looking for a friendly professional to help answer your questions, stop by Black's Tire Inc., located 1415 East Main Street, Westminster, South Carolina. Give them a call, 864-647-9292. If you're a website guy, go check out the website. We have it pinned in the show comments. And man, it's exciting. Mark, I got to hear you this morning, so I know you got a ton of content ready for us because you had the privilege of filling in for Mickey Plyler this morning on The Roar. How did that go? How did you feel? Have you done that before?
Yeah, I've filled in for Mickey a couple times before. Zach Orr in there, of course, producing and co-hosting made it super easy for me. And Mickey's audience, man, 6 a.m. comes super early if you're not a morning guy, and I'm not a morning guy. So I got up at 4:30 this morning, drove down to Clemson to host the show, and the audience was interacting with us by 6:05 on the text lines. We're getting phone calls. It's amazing. All you folks that get up super early, hats off to you. We have to talk a lot about some of the topics we're talking about tonight, so I'm excited to go a little bit deeper on them with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We got a ton of people already jumped in. We got Dean, Elad, Rick, looks like Kevron. Welcome to the show. Gary, Alex. Got a couple people. Like I said, if you're not friends with me on Facebook or Mark on Facebook, sometimes we can't see you. So give us a shout in the comments. Let us know. Say Go Tigers. Give us a little football emoji or whatever you want to do. A thumbs up. Hey, if you like the show, like the show. All you got to do is hit the blue thumbs up to like the show or the red heart if you love the show. And if you really love the show, share it with your friends. Some of the people that are out there, some Tiger Nation, doesn't know about the Morgan Thomas Show. Give them a share, and we'd really appreciate it. Tonight's show is really exciting because I have a fun special guest on the show. Obviously, we talked to Mark so far, but it's also a little bittersweet because This show is dedicated in memory of Tyshon Dye, a former Clemson and East Carolina running back that drowned last Friday at a outing at a park in Georgia. Tyshon Dye was only 25 years old, which is crazy to think. I'm 32. 25 is really, really young. I thought, I knew everything at 25, but 25 is really young. And we saw some comments from Dabo Sweeney recently about just how sweet of a player he was. Saw Wayne Gallman reach out to him on Twitter, just talking about how emotionally impactful, devastating that was to him, because he had never lost anybody in his inner circle like that. And, Dabo talks about Clemson family. And when you have somebody so young pass on in your family, especially in something that, he was doing something that he obviously enjoyed, being with his family, it is definitely heartbreaking as a Clemson fan, a Clemson player, and really college football fan in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Tragic. I still haven't processed all of it. I don't think a lot of Clemson Nation has. I did have the pleasure of having Jerome KJ III, JK, on the show on the Roar this morning, and he has kind of spearheaded the campaign to raise all the funds to pay for Tyshon's funeral. His goal is to raise $25,000. They had raised, as of about 9 o'clock this morning, almost $54,000, over 500 individual donors through a GoFundMe campaign. And that money is going to go directly to Tyshon's family to be able to offset some of the costs. So obviously that doesn't do anything about the heartbreak and the devastation to the family that's going on through this event, but an incredible way for Clemson Nation to step up and show them how much they care about Tyshon and his group of family and friends.
Yeah, it's definitely a family, put your money where your mouth is, right? And if you say it's a family, hey, go out there and support Tyshon. If you can't support it, share the cause, and they're also, I think JK even put out some visitation times there too. So if you can, if you're in that area, hey, you're a Tiger fan, go check out that on Twitter. He had an impact on the field, very dynamic guy, fast, but bruising too. Didn't light up the stat book by any means, but definitely, as Dabo said, was the sweetest player. Everybody seemed to love him, and he definitely will be missed. So our thoughts and prayers go out to his family. Actually had another close friend of the family, friend of our church family, pass away, Henry Stone, who was a long time South Carolina State Highway Patrolman. You might see that on News Channel 4 tonight. I noticed that as I just logged on for the show tonight, that his son mentioned that he passed away. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the Stone family as well. They've been, a big supporter of the show, and so we wish you well for sure. But the show, we have to go to the first topic, even though it's tough to do. But let's jump over to the first topic, because we do have a lot to talk about tonight with Clemson basketball, and they got a big game coming on. They're about to play for the gold medal against Ukraine, which is a familiar team. They just played Ukraine and won by 1 point. So it looks like, what time they're going to be playing on the FISU TV, right? It looks like it's going to be in the afternoon. Is that right?
Yeah, it's at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and you can't stream it live. I think it's FISU.tv is where you can go. You can definitely do a Google or a Bing search for it if you want to find it. But that game right around the corner on Thursday afternoon, and Clemson has a chance to bring home a gold medal. Not many college athletes get an opportunity to do that. So that is really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm an Army veteran, so I love anything that has to do with the United States. I love, there was some controversy with the women's soccer, but I still supported it because I love to support the United States in their sports, and in basketball, soccer, whatever it may be. But I'm excited to see what Clemson can do. Like you said, not many teams that can go out for a gold medal, especially after kind of a very disappointing last season. A lot of the fans were very upset. I know a lot of the boards were lighting up about, hey, we got to get rid of Brownell. We got to start over fresh. This is just terrible. We had all these great players, all these experienced players, and they fell flat on their face, right? And I get it. I mean, I'm still a little bit bitter about some of the games that ended up. You got to think, there were 7 games lost by 5 points or less last year. But I believe that's why this tournament is a good thing, and it shows some hope for Tiger fans, because they are winning games. Not only are they winning games that they are down at halftime. A lot of these games are down at halftime, but they're winning games by 1 point, winning games by 3 points, 2 points. So it's really nice to see some change there. Also, if you're following Twitter at all, you see Amir Sims. He seems to have really taken over for the Tigers' leadership position that they needed. They desperately needed after losing so many starters, so many experienced guys on the team. Amir seems to be stepping up, getting in front of the camera, pumping up his guys. They all seem to be very excited about, like you said, playing for the United States. So I'm excited to see what happens. I think it's a step in the right direction, especially since being disappointed last year.
Yeah, let me tell you, Amir Sims, I don't care if you're playing in a church basketball league, 27 points and 16 rebounds in a medal game, because you were trying to qualify for the gold medal game against Israel, is an incredible stat line. There's a bunch of things that I really like so far about this Clemson team. Number one, it is body language. I felt like 2 years ago on the Sweet 16 run, the team looked like they were having a great time. They were winning these basketball games. They were always smiling. It looked like fun. Last season, it felt like work for that Clemson team. And I don't know if there was stuff going on in the locker room. I know they had some injuries. We found out that, of course, Sheldon was hurt for the majority of the season with his knee, right? So you have no idea what kind of impact they had. So that was the first thing I was looking for with Clemson here in this tournament is, what are they going to look like? Are they going to look like they're having a good time out there? They look like they're having an absolute great time, fantastic attitudes. I love it. I also love Brad Brownell. It looks like he's made some changes as well. I don't want to say Brad was tight during the season last year. That would be unfair. But I'm kind of getting back to the same thing here, right? It felt like it was work, and it felt like it was always coming from a difficult and negative place last season. Brad looks like he's like hanging out at a 4th of July barbecue, having a great time coaching this team, and they've been doing great. Here's another thing I like. These close games you talked about, Clemson couldn't buy one last year. All of these games in this tournament have been very close games. Like you said, they've been coming from behind in a lot of these games. They didn't have against Israel. They did early in the game. Late, they held on to a lead. But they're coming from behind in these games, and they're holding on to win. What an incredible team-building opportunity for this. And here's the final thing. They're playing everybody. And I feel like Brad Brownell is locked in on 7, maybe 8 guys for these previous seasons at Clemson. Every single player is playing and contributing in this tournament. I hope that's something that we see going forward. It keeps the legs fresh. It's kept the defensive intensity up. I really like the athleticism of this team. So I know on paper, it's real easy to look at last year, losing all these seniors and all these talent, and going into this year with some transfers like Tevin Mack and some others, and some guys that didn't play much last year and some new freshmen incoming, and immediately be like, hey, this team's not going to be as good as they were last year. I really like what I see so far, and it's something to get excited about going into the next season for Clemson basketball.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there, and I'm definitely excited. I know it's only July. It's crazy to be talking about basketball in July, but
Exactly.
and I listened to your talk on the radio this morning, and like I said, I am with you every step of the way. Especially like I said earlier, with winning games where they're down at halftime or winning close games. Those are things that they weren't able to do. Obviously, like I said previously, Amir Sims showing up, showing out, becoming a leader of the team. I mean, like you said, 27 points. I mean, that's not by accident. Another thing is, this is a guy I kind of picked on a lot last year, seemed to get out on the court and do nothing, was John Newman. John Newman's in the double digits in points just about every game in this tournament, and that's really shocked me. And I'm not just talking barely getting into 10. I'm talking about 16, 18 points. And like you said, Tevin Mack. You know, Tevin Mack's a guy who's going to play this year. He's eligible, okay? He's a graduate. He's ready to play. Some people are saying, well, Brad's got all these transfers and he's playing all these transfers. That's why they're winning. Well, you're not watching the games if that's the case. I mean, I will give you Nick Honor. Nick Honor, they don't really have, because of Clyde Trapp going out with an ACL, they don't really have that guy that they originally intended to be their point guard. What was crazy, what was so sad about the the Clyde Trapp thing was that they had just posted on Instagram him running the point in practice and just dominating. And then 2 hours later, Larry Williams says he's torn his ACL. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. This is just so devastating. You have Jonathan Baer, who was supposed to be like an 18, 20-plus point guy, down low, tears his ACL. Will he be able to return? Well, he did it late May. If you're looking 9 months, you're talking, January, February. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for them to even make it before March, especially with an ACL. You don't want to rush it. I know guys like Deshaun Watson did it, but there's not a bunch of Deshaun Watsons out there, so I don't expect everybody to return back from an ACL like that. I tore my right ACL twice. It takes about a year for a regular person just to get back to normal running, and much less high level ACC level basketball. So, I don't expect those guys to come back. They could surprise me. I'm not gonna hold out against it. But definitely a team that's come back from 2 starters tearing their ACL and to go make it to the gold medal. And the games that they've played, they haven't been a bunch of scrubs. I mean, China was like a low-seeded team. They just killed them. China, will give you that. But Israel, Ukraine, Germany, those teams were high-ranked teams, and a lot of those teams that they beat already are playing for medals themselves. So it's definitely not pushovers for them. And I like to see what Brad Brownell's doing. Wichita State writer, I talked to him last year, towards the end of March Madness, or the NIT tournament rather, and he mentioned that it was just baffling to him that the Tigers statistically were so good at scoring in transition and scoring in the first 5 seconds of the shot clock, but Brad Brownell consistently made them hold the ball till the end of the shot clock. And that was when they were at their worst points per possession statistically. And he questioned, like, why does a coach see something statistically and not change? And I don't know Brad Brownell's technique. I'm not a big basketball strategist, but I hope to see him adjust a little more, kind of maybe change some things up. I think it's good that they got Anthony Goings in there to kind of coach the guards around a little bit more. So I'm excited. I hope you're excited too. Hey, you got a team playing in a gold medal match. Why wouldn't you be excited, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And if you think about it, I know Clemson Nation's been complaining a little bit about transfers. Think about the transfers that have already had an impact just the last few seasons under Brownell in this program. He's been playing this transfer game a little bit longer than everyone else. So if you want to look at it from a different perspective, and I like to be super positive when I'm looking at all of these things, right? Maybe Brad was a front runner on this transfer game because everybody's having to play it now. There's a lot more people in the transfer portal. The grad transfer rules have changed a little bit. Brad's already been playing this game and playing it very successfully. So whether you like the idea of transfers or not, guess what, folks? They're here to stay. And it's going to come more like this in college football as well. So I feel like Brad's been a front runner on this, and it will be advantageous for this Clemson program the next couple of years as he can continue to fill out roster spots with great contributing transfers and grad transfers. So everybody's going to be doing it more and more, and it's going to become a norm in 5 years in basketball. It's literally like a second recruiting process that's going down. Tell me another coach in the country that's done as good a job over the last 5 years of doing it as Brad Brownell. You'd be very hard pressed to find one. So I'm trying to look at it from a positive perspective and saying, hey, college basketball is changing. Transfers are becoming a bigger deal. The NBA labor agreement's coming up in 2 years. So the one and done rule in college basketball is probably going to be finished. And high school players are going to be able to go directly to the NBA. So it's going to make transfers even that much more important at that point to be able to be successful in bringing them in. So let's give Brad some time. I know he's had a long time. I want to see him in the NCAA tournament as well. I was extremely disappointed when they didn't make it last year. They did okay in the NIT. I'd like to see him go further. Don't know if this is an NCAA tournament team this year, but I'll tell you this, they're a lot of fun to watch, and that's going to be a good thing.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited. I could go all day about the recruiting part, people saying that he can't recruit.
Yeah.
Transfers are recruiting, and he's landing 4-star guys left and right. No problem in the transfer market. Not only that, Mark, but Kevon Moore, top 50 player. So he's starting to get better and better in his skill at recruiting transfer players. Tevin Mack, another great player. Obviously, last year's team basically all transfers. So you might be onto something. Let's go over to our segment number 2. Let's jump over to that. We'll transition from basketball over to football, and I think we're going to finish out with football the rest of the night. I know you guys are loving football. You're ready for some football because we have less than 50 days. It's crazy to think that it's so close. Let me give a shout out. We got Jeremy Smith, Dustin Dobbins, Mark D. Decker. Guys, welcome to the show. Thank you for watching. We still have a ton of people watching. If you're watching and I didn't get a chance to shout you out, make sure you give us a shout out put a comment in there. And put a tiger paw, whatever you want to do, so we can give you a shout out on the show. Thank you and welcome to the show. The next topic is kind of something I wanted to talk about just real quick about 2 guys that I really felt like I was really interested in seeing shine, seeing perform really well this season. Let me start with the first one. So we're going to go over to the first one's Lynn J. Dixon. And the reason why I picked this guy is because ESPN's going to cover Travis Etienne all day, every day, twice a day, maybe 3 times a day. So you're going to get your big dose of Travis Etienne all season. I didn't really want to dig into that, type of player who's just done so well for 2 years, and we know he's going to just dominate again this year. We hope he dominates. I'm sure he will. But I wanted to get at somebody who was outside the Heisman talk, maybe that ESPN's not going to talk about, somebody that was kind of looked at as like, oh, he's not ready, he's too skinny. Somebody who did really well that last year in the limited amount of time he had, and that's why I picked Lyn-J Dixon. I love him. So he started, I think he was like 5'11", and 177 pounds. Well, if you go and watch the spring game, and the running game was a little tough to watch on the spring game. It wasn't the best in the world for sure. But every time you have the spring game, what's next? You have the exit interviews. Well, guess what happened just a few weeks after the spring game? Some people started transferring out. Well, as we've talked on your show many times, Mark, the exit interviews are a big deal. Dabo Swinney is a very honest coach. We know that. And, he's going to have candid conversations with these players and tell them exactly where he thinks they fit in the depth chart in 2019. And all of a sudden, after one of those exit interviews, I believe, and I don't know for sure, but like I said, after the exit interviews, all of a sudden, Lyn-J Dixon is now thrust into the number 2 spot. I'm excited for him. Like I said, he started at 177. Per some notes I'm getting, per some things I'm getting from guys at practice, he's almost hitting 200 pounds now, and he plans to get to 210. If he's 5'11", you're talking 30-something pounds in just a couple of months? That's crazy to think how much, and we're not talking like hamburger pounds. We're not talking Big Macs. We're talking muscle, Ben Batson type stuff. And so what I would like to see is him obviously get to that 210 if he can. I think it's a stretch for sure, but for him to be almost at 200 or at 200 right now is a big jump for him. He's going to need to fill in for that Tavian Feaster type role where you do have to block for Trevor. That's a big deal. But what do you think about him? I'm excited. I think even with the added pounds, he's going to be electric.
So he had, I think it was 62 carries last year. So about 4 carries a game, 4 to 5 carries a game is all he was getting. 575 yards, 5 touchdowns. Okay, that's about the numbers he had. You figure he's going to double the amount of carries he gets this year. And if he stays on that same track, you're talking about 1,000-yard rusher, 10 TDs. I think you take that in any situation. And again, he's a little bit smaller. ETN runs with such force. And even though he's not the biggest back in the world, I don't think of ETN as a power back, right? I think of him as an explosive back. But he can run between the tackles and really bang them down. Lyn-J is going to get the ball. It's going to remind me, I think, a little bit of ETN as a freshman, where he was getting the ball late in games and the other team was worn down a little bit, and he was going out and hammering guys and then running past them. I think you're going to see Lyn-J benefit a little bit from that as ETN kind of becomes the feaster hammer that we've had the last couple of seasons. He's going to be doing a little bit more of the power running, still breaking the big runs, and then Lyn-J is going to be able to come in when maybe the second tier of defense is in, or maybe that defense is getting a little bit tired in the third and fourth quarter. And Lyn-J, as we've seen, you give him a little tiny slice, see you later. He's got incredible speed. He's such a fantastic athlete. I think there's a ton of upside with Lyn-J this year. And then also, ETN's going to get more carries as well, more than likely, unless a third back steps up over the course of fall practice. And I'm sure there will be a third back that gets some carries. But you're going to see ETN getting more carries as well, which is also beneficial. And then finally, Lyn-J can catch the ball out of the backfield. We haven't seen ETN do that as much. So it's going to be interesting to see if they dial up some of these screen plays, some of these wheel routes where you can get Lyn-J in space. And if you get him in space, you got a big problem on your hands if you're an opposing defense. So I'm really high on Lyn-J Dixon this season. And you can see him being the potential successor for ETN, assuming ETN leaves after this season, and really working his way into that role. I'm excited about his upside this year.
Yeah, he's got a ton of upside. Talk about his stats. You said 62 carries, 547 yards, 8.8 yards per carry. I mean, that's crazy. I looked at him compared to Tavien Feaster's freshman and sophomore and junior year. In just his freshman year as basically the third string guy, he had more yards and better yards per carry than Feaster's freshman and junior year. So he's definitely somebody who can be electric and who can dominate and just give you that burst out of the backfield. I kind of see a little bit of Andre Ellington. Maybe I'm off base there. I don't know. He's not. I think Andre is a little bit shorter. Yeah. But I see a little bit of a mixture between ETN and Andre. And it's interesting to see because you've got Wayne Gallman came in. He was like, Wayne was supposed to be the guy that was attached to, whatever his name, Kim Deechie, yeah. Right? He was supposed to be attached to him, and he was just a supplemental recruiting commit, right? Well, he grew up under Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott and did really well towards his last season, right? Same thing with Travis. Travis, I saw a stat out there where Travis was like, I guess it was a note on Twitter where Travis was picked up like in January. Basically went there. Dabo talked to him one time, and it was like done deal. Boom. They also said that about Isaiah Simmons as well. Late January, Dabo comes in, and the Dabo factor, boom, it's deal. He got him, and look at him. 3-star, like high 3-star, 4-star guy on Rivals. ETN is just now a Heisman candidate. So it's kind of neat to see these guys develop. Even Feaster, I felt like Feaster developed into a better player. I think he's better than when he started. I felt like we had higher hopes with him getting 28 and being Mr. Football of South Carolina. But, I felt like he represented the university well and, progressed as his career went on. Obviously, I'm not gonna argue with anybody who says that we don't need Tavien back. I mean, Dabo would say we need Tavien back. I mean, he would take him back. He said it in April. I wish he wasn't transferring. So the stable, the depth of the running back position, it's going to hurt with him out. I mean, Tavien's a great player. We can't deny that. It's going to hurt emotionally for a lot of fans if he has to go to that team, 2 hours down the road. It's going to hurt. I hope he doesn't go there. I hope he goes to Virginia Tech instead. But I think that a lot of people need to give Lin-J some credit. A lot of people say, well, Lin-J can't take his spot because he's too skinny. Well, he was too skinny when you watched him against Boston College last year. This is like almost a year later and 30-something pounds later. So he's definitely going to show some people up and going to make his name known in the headlines. I look forward to it. So on paper, to me, I'm already seeing why he earned the number 2 spot. When I look at him, and you didn't really see much from him in the spring game, but when I look at his film, when I look at kind of how he's put in the time in the weight room, coupled with the fact that he's just, I think, more explosive than Feaster, I can see why he was the clear number 2 coming into the fall, this year.
Yeah, think about all the articles that we've read in the offseason. It's all about Trevor Lawrence, T. Higgins, and Justin Ross, right? How explosive is this offense going to be for Clemson? But the focus has been the pass game. You're not seeing as much about ETN. You're definitely not seeing a lot about Lin-J Dixon. Just think about the season that Travis Etienne had last year and how successful the running game was for Clemson. This could be the greatest offense in Clemson history this year. And I feel like ETN and then definitely Lin-J Dixon are almost an afterthought. Think about this. You're putting Higgins and Ross maybe on the same side of the field, running those guys down the field. You're going to have ETN and Lin-J Dixon being guarded by linebackers, okay? If you can get them the ball out of the backfield, through the air, or even a running game, they make one of those guys miss, and it's big problems. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the balance is because Clemson's very particular about the balance between run and pass, right? And you see a lot of games where they'll be, Clemson had 300 yards rushing and 300 yards passing. That's not by accident. You're just not hearing a ton about the run game here in the offseason. It's going to be massive again next year, and Lin-J will be one of the big beneficiaries of that.
When Dabo said that that they want to be a running team first, I was like, yeah, right. Come on, you're just trying to get that running back recruit that you're going after. Yeah, right. It's all about the wide receivers. As Don Munson said, and I loved your show with Don Munson. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, it's on The Ring on 105.5 The Roar's Facebook page. Don Munson's 1-hour interview with him with Mark was amazing. I loved it. But he said Deshaun Watson and his frisbee catching dogs. Well, I think it's Trevor Lawrence and his frisbee catching dogs because of how exciting they are and they can just do everything. But if you really look at it statistically, I mean, Dabo held true to his word. He definitely wants a team that can pound the ball and not afraid to run it up the middle, not afraid to just run at you, no matter how good your defense is. And it really is. It does just wear you down so much more than the passing does. It's interesting how that works, but for whatever reason, the running game just beats. If you have a good running game going and you're rolling, 5-6 carries every time, you're just doing that, man, not only does it wear you down, but it demoralizes you big time. And that transitions to me to our second player that I wanted to talk about demoralizing somebody, and that was Xavier Thomas. He demoralized Eric Dungey in the Syracuse game, just killed him, right, in that tackle. One that ESPN even wrote up an entire article about how awesome that tackle was. So Thomas is less of a unknown. I think a lot of people are going to be waiting for him. I think he's going to be that guy that an hour before the show starts, 30 minutes before the show starts, you're going to hear them talk about Thomas over and over and over about how he's just going to take over. So he's really a guy that we all expect to shine, but I still wanted to talk about him a little bit because he's taking over a just legendary defensive line. And Travis Etienne recently said he doesn't hear as much smack talk anymore because you had four guys that were so, I mean, they went to movies together. They played video games together. They dressed up in Power Rangers together. They waited so that Dexter Lawrence could graduate and draft together. Which is, I mean, brotherhood, true and true, right? So it's going to be some big shoes to fill on that defensive line. Thomas, I know, is ready, and he's already shown that. I mean, he's a freshman All-American, and he was like behind a first-round draft pick. How many people do you know become freshman All-American behind a first-round draft pick? You normally don't get a lot of snaps in front of or behind a first-round draft pick, and he got enough. And during his short amount of snaps, he was an All-American, which is crazy to say. And I just look for him to just dominate even more. And I just keep replaying that series. When I was doing the notes for this segment, I would just keep replaying that Syracuse sack because it wasn't just an awesome let-free sack, but it was like 2 hours of anxiety for Clemson fans just released in that one plant on the ground of Dungy. So it was definitely one that was something that catapulted them to continue to just be the best team ever and be undefeated. I don't know if if they're gonna gel like those four guys that we had. I think it's harder to gel than it is to just have one stud. I know for many, Clemson's has always had a stud on the defensive line. It seems like since I was born, basically. There's always been some rotation of some good guys, some really good guys, good players on the defensive line. So I'm not surprised that Thomas is another star in the line of stars, but I'm not concerned, but I'm curious to see how the new guys mesh, the Fosters, the Pickneys, the Williams, the Henrys, the Tyler Davis. I just wonder how they're all going to mesh together and form that brotherhood. Is there going to be a Power Rangers 2.0? I don't know. Are they going to go trick-or-treating together? I don't know. Are they going to just destroy backfields? I think they will. But it's definitely an interesting moment because right now, that defensive line, for the most part, is guys that you don't really see, other than Thomas, you don't really see on the poster.
Yeah, let's get this going, right? X right here. I mean, that's what we're going to be doing in Death Valley a lot next season because he's going to make a big difference. Okay, so Don Munson, of course, voice of the Clemson Tigers, this is what he said to me when he was on the ring last week. He said that he feels that Xavier Thomas has an excellent chance of becoming the greatest defensive lineman ever to be at Clemson. Let's let that sink in for a minute. That's incredible upside that they're already seeing in Xavier Thomas as just a freshman. Reminds me so much of Vic Beasley, his speed, his athleticism, but the size that he has as well. He's not just getting around the end and getting sacks. He's pushing guys out of the way and could be a big difference maker in the run game as well. Let's not sell him short right there. He had some big stops in the run game last year when he was playing also. I think the sky is the limit for Xavier Thomas. And I think when we're thinking about Clemson's defensive line going from last year to this year, it's going to be very unfair to make a comparison, right? Because you've got all those veterans. You do have some veteran presence here, but a lot of young guys. Brent Venables has replaced some fantastic defensive linemen at Clemson a number of times. I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be able to do that again this season. And when I hear someone like Don say the upside on Xavier Thomas is that big, I'm a big-time believer in that. And also, let's remember, Isaiah Simmons has just been named USA Today best linebacker in the country. Maybe the best athlete on the field on a defense in America is Isaiah Simmons. I think he's going to be a terror this year. So Clemson's going to get their sacks. They're going to get their tackles for loss. They lead or number 2 in the country every season in tackles for loss. I don't think that's going to change. It just might not be the usual way that they get there this year. And you might see a guy like Isaiah Simmons get more. And you might see some backup guys on the defensive line getting more of those tackles for loss instead of really being the rock stars on the defensive line. I could not possibly be more excited about what Brent is dialing up for this season, and especially some tests in those early games, right? You've got a Georgia Tech team that I don't think is necessarily going to be strong. You don't have any tape on these guys, right? They were the triple option Paul Johnson mess for so long. You have no idea what they're bringing in week one. I guarantee you, as soon as Texas A&M season ended last year, the Jimbo Fisher started sitting in a room with a whiteboard and trying to dial up stuff for Clemson in week two, right? And then you go up to the nemesis of the last two seasons, Syracuse, and their high octane offense that's always bringing craziness, right? You got three teams laying in wait for Clemson from an offensive perspective. It's going to be an immediate test for these young guys. And I look at Xavier Thomas as a guy that needs to be a leader on this defense, along with Isaiah Simmons, Tanner Muse back in the secondary as well, and Kayvon Wallace, let's not forget about him, and lift these guys up early. I think some of the strictest tests on the defensive side are going to come early. If Clemson makes it through that without a scratch, which I think they will, watch out. That defense is going to get really good by the time it's playoff time again next year.
Well, you got some great points there. I will tell you, though, I mean, I did watch the Georgia Tech spring game. It's available on YouTube. What was interesting to me is just how similar it was to more of a Chad Morris type offense, or even what Clemson does, which I feel like is not going to really go well for when they play against Clemson, because what does Brent Venables practice against all day?
Yeah.
He practices against Clemson type plays. I'm sure when they are ready to play against Georgia Tech, they're going to adjust a little bit. But I looked at, you had split backs, one on each side of the quarterback, typical shotgun spread. Slot guy goes across the middle, got one guy going deep, got one guy maybe going post. One thing I will say is it's kind of basic, at least in the spring game. You have your one receiver that they look at, that the quarterbacks seem to look at, and then the check down guy. It was never the third or fourth guy like Trevor can do. Even as a true freshman, Trevor could do that just walking into the stadium. But I think that also doesn't go well for Georgia Tech, because Clemson is the secondary for sure is going to be ready for somebody who just looks at two different receivers every play. But I think Georgia Tech is definitely very similar to Clemson, and I think that's a good thing for Clemson because they're used to it, and it's not wasting their time against some gimmicky triple option that nobody uses except for the military schools. And I love them, I'm an Army guy, but I just hate having to prepare for the triple option, knowing that it's just for one game. You have to do so much preparation for just one game and worry about the cut blocks. You don't have to worry about any of that anymore. So I think it's more of a traditional spread option or spread, shotgun kind of style. And so I'm excited to see that. I think that's a good thing for those defensive guys, like you said, that are kind of going to be leaning on those veterans, but those guys that we don't know their names very well yet. I think it's going to be good to get them ready. And it's a Thursday night game, so they have time to prepare for that Texas A&M game. And like you said, Texas A&M doesn't have that extra 2 days or so, but they also don't have a ton of film on the new defensive line. And you have to trust Brent Venables. I mean, it's been how many years? Not 8 years of 10-win seasons. You can't not trust Dabo or Brent or Elliott or Jeff. You just you just have to let them do their thing and just understand that they're great at developing these players from, like you said, Vic Beasley type guy. I mean, he wasn't a big 5-star guy. Came in, they developed him up. These guys that are taking these guys' place, like KJ Henry was a 5-star guy on Rivals. Pickney, Williams, 4-star guys. Foster, 4-star, I think. So you got a defensive line, even though they're not as well known to maybe the fans or maybe ESPN, but they're definitely some legitimate guys. And so I'm excited to see Lynn J. Dixon, as we talked about earlier, and I'm excited to see that entire defensive line head up by leading the way by Xavier Thomas as well. Big X, like you said. I can't wait to do that. See 80,000 fans hold up an X sign when we just nail a quarterback. That'll be some exciting thing, especially that Carolina quarterback. It'd be nice to just throw up an X when they do that. But that was topic number 2. Let's go over to halftime real quick. This is where we take a break, remind you of our sponsors. We have Black's Tire Inc. in Westminster, South Carolina, 864-647-9292. We have Heating and Cooling Services Inc., 864-224-7655 in Anderson, South Carolina. Both guys that I have grown up with, family, friends of family, and both do great service there. So if you need any heating and cooling repair or service checks, go check them out. Go talk to Jason or Mark there, and go talk to Preston or Dale over at Black's Tire. Good guys there, and they'll hook you up. Let them know that the Morgan, you heard about him on the Morgan Thomas Show. And let's give a shout out to the guys they're joined us now. Got Jeremy White, Jason Priester, Brandon Emery, Barry Teague. Justin Kirkland says the defensive line is going to be different, but elite. I agree. Jason Priester says he's going to miss shutting down that tech option, and I agree too. It was frustrating there for the first couple of years, but then Brent Venables figured it out, and it was just domination after that. So I agree with that. But this is our halftime little quick chat. Not going to talk too much about it, but this is something that I've pulled off the Tiger forums, Reddit, and TigerNet. I saw some things there. Tavian, what happens? Somebody asked, what happens if Tavien Feaster doesn't graduate? Well, first of all, before I go into this at all, we don't wish any player to not graduate. We want players to graduate. We don't want him to get flunked out at all. We don't want him to be stressed out. I have done summer classes at Clemson. It's not fun. You in 4-5 month class in 6 weeks. So it is not fun to do, especially when you have your hopes and dreams sitting on that B that you got to get, or whatever he has to get through. But we both, I'm sure you agree with me, Mark, that we wish Tavien the best wherever he goes, and we do wish that he graduates. But we're going to ask that question just to kind of toy with it a little bit. What happens if he doesn't graduate? So what's your thoughts? I'll let you start it off.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I've been thinking about this one. I think Dabo is the kind of coach that would have Tavien back if he wanted to come back, right? Well, so let's start here. Tavien can still transfer even if he doesn't graduate, right? It just means he can't play immediately. But it seems like he's waiting this long on his decision. It's starting to look to me like, hey, I want to graduate and then leave where I can play immediately. And for whatever reason, he doesn't make it. I'm guessing he's overloading some classes this summer, not just taking one. My guess is he's taking a bunch to try to get there, right? And to get out early and to be able to transfer. So if he does not make it, maybe he wants to stay another year at Clemson, or maybe he stays another year in red shirts and then goes and grad transfers. There's all kinds of different nuances, and who knows, maybe they're going to change the transfer portal again next week, and then he can transfer to 4 different schools at once. Who knows where it's going to end up? But it feels like Dabo would be the kind of coach that if Tavien came back and said, hey, I'm having a little buyer's remorse here, I'd like to stay. My guess is that he would give Tavien a chance to earn a position back on the team. I just can't imagine we're going to end up there. And for a player to come to you and say, hey, I really want to leave, and then come back a couple of months later and say that he wants to stay, there's just going to be a lot of repairing of relationships. Not that there's a broken relationship, but you said you're leaving and now you're back. It would just be a really interesting nuance to set into the team. I think Dabo would be willing to do it. I just can't imagine we're going to end up there.
Yeah, I agree too. I think it was a fun question to ask. It was interesting for the fans to kind of see, but I don't see that happening. I mean, I trust that Tavien is going to get through the classes. It is going to be weird. I know that T. Higgins and some other guys came out and said, no skin off my back. I mean, hey, whatever he wants to do. If he goes to Carolina, doesn't matter to me. I still support my brother. And you want to see that from a family type atmosphere from that team. So I don't think a lot of the players are, like you said, are negative towards him. But it definitely, especially in the running back room, it would be kind of weird. You're Lynn J. Dixon, like we just talked about. All of a sudden, you're the number 2 guy. Then all of a sudden, now you're competing again. And then maybe you're Rencher. Maybe you're Darren Rencher, and you've been busting it just to get on the team. And now you're like, oh man, I was the 3 guy. Now I'm not. Or maybe I am. I don't know. And hey, maybe you're Ches Malushi and you're like, hey, I'm ready to jump in and just show people out, show what I can do as a freshman. And now you're like, man, maybe I might get redshirted now. So it does kind of, I think it hurts the running back room more than it does anybody else. But it's still something I don't really see is going to be a possibility. But I did see I did see a negative thought, and I wanted to kind of address this just from my point of view, because I really feel like it's just interesting. Some fans, and I'm not going to say all fans, but some fans seem to be, very, very hurt and just want negative for Tavien. And to me, if you've watched Dabo Swinney at all, if you've shaken his hand at all, you know that he wouldn't wish you to think that way. I mean, Dabo Swinney is all about love and service and caring for people. And even if it negatively affects what he's doing, his team, but it's best for the player, that's what's best. And so, and a lot of people are saying, well, he wore the jersey and now he's going to go to Carolina. To me, the jersey is sentimental. It's like, that thing, your great aunt gave you and you don't want to throw it away, but it's kind of ugly. The jersey number is something that I think we get too attached to. You're going to run out of jersey numbers if you retire every number that every elite player that Dabo is going to bring in. And jersey numbers have always been, I know when I played, I wanted a jersey number. And so it meant something to me. And if they're all tied up and you can't use them, then it's kind of a negative recruiting. And Dabo would never do something that's negative recruiting. I think he did the best he could to balance respecting the player that wore the number and did so well for Clemson, but also allowing new players to cement their legacy and build on it. Did it fill out the way we wanted it to? We wanted Mr. Football Feaster to number 28 to be the next CJ Spiller. We did. It didn't pan out to be that way, but that doesn't mean that he didn't deserve the number and he should, be erased from the Clemson record books, and he's not a graduate. Especially if he graduates, he's going to be a 2-time champion that graduated. What more could you want from a guy, especially if you don't think about it this way? Kelly Bryant left, but Tavian Feaster stayed, and he was actually the number 3 guy at the beginning of the season, but he stayed when he could have left too. He could have said, hey, Kelly, let's go. Let's get on the bus together. Let's go to Missouri together. But he stayed, and he toughed it out. I think that he did. He paid his time. I don't wish any ill will against Tavien Feaster at all. So if you're one of those fans that's like, man, I just have ill will against Tavien because of that number 28, I say really reflect on that, because I don't think that that's the way the coach that we love so much would want you to feel.
Yeah, I'll always remember Tavien Feaster's 87,000-yard run against NC State was one of his highlight moments. I think Tavien's a great kid, is what I hear as well. Here's my take on it, man. Best of luck to you wherever you go. I'd rather not see him go to South Carolina either. To me, I'd rather not see him go to a team that Clemson's going to have to play again, just because it becomes this big issue that we're going to talk about on the radio and your show. I'd rather be able to go somewhere where he could just focus on football and not be the focus in a game later on where a lot of Clemson Nation might be saying, hey, we're going to shut Tavien down and show him he made a mistake and all that stuff. So best of luck to him. I hear he's a great kid. If you can get your degree in 3 years, it took me 5 years to get my degree. If you can get your degree in 3 years, you can go do whatever you want, son. So I hope he has a great, successful career wherever he ends up, and then on to the NFL for Tavien Feaster if he's lucky, right?
Yeah, completely agree. Let's jump over to another topic that I felt like, that was the end of halftime. Oh, wait a minute. Before we get to this topic, I'm getting ahead of myself. I promised something. And so we had a Charleston Sports Club of Clemson allowed us to give a $25 gift card out to anybody who liked the post and liked the page. So we had a ton of people do that. We really appreciate it. 2,000 people reached in that post. And we had a ton of people like the post. And so I ran a random number generator that I learned from my great degree at Clemson. And I came out with a fan of the show, Travis Sanders. So you've won the $25 Charleston Sports Pub Clemson gift card. We'll reach out to you and let you know how to get that card and go enjoy you some wings or hamburger, whatever. Charleston Sports Pub of Clemson is a friend of mine, a high school friend of mine, and he's been doing really well. He's got a couple of Charleston Sports Pubs all over South Carolina, and he's been doing really well. Built it from the bottom up, and so go support him out there. He even delivers to your tailgate during football season. So that's, hey, don't even bring any food. Don't go get, Spink's chicken. Wait, order you some Charleston Sports Pub wings and get them delivered to your tailgate. That's an awesome deal that he has going on there. So go check him out. And again, congratulations to Travis there. Let's jump over to topic number 3, now that I got that out. So I didn't forget about you. I fulfilled my promise. But the second thing, or the third topic of the night, is something that I saw kind of on Shaking the Southland. Jason Priester is watching us, and he's a writer for there. It said, a lot of people are saying Syracuse is the tougher game than Texas A&M. And all I heard in January was Texas A&M is the game on the schedule. It's the best non-conference game in all of college football. It is the game. But now we're getting closer to the season, and all of a sudden people are saying, well, Syracuse is actually going to be tougher than Texas A&M. And I wanted to give you 3 quick reasons why I agree, and then a couple of quick reasons why I don't agree. And then we'll kind of go, I'll see what you think, Mark. So my first reason is that Clemson what's the game? This is kind of interesting to say. Why are they more difficult than Texas A&M? But one of the reasons is because they're the game after Texas A&M. so they have to. Clemson has to play a tough team and then turn around and play away in the Carrier Dome against Syracuse. So I think the point of the schedule, Syracuse has got to play, I think, William and Mary and then Maryland. And we don't know what Maryland's going to do.
Liberty and Maryland.
Yes, Liberty and Maryland. So we don't know kind of Maryland right now. We think they're going to be kind of dangerous, but it's still kind of a new coach rebuilding kind of situation. So we don't really know yet. But Syracuse is going to have an early game that Saturday before, and then they're going to be able to watch the Texas A&M game, I guess, maybe, and then wait for Clemson to come to town. So that's going to be one reason for yes. It's after a hard game, right? Another reason for yes is something that one of the writers for Syracuse came on and told me about, which I didn't realize, is it's actually slated to be college game day there. And it's the first ever college game day for football at Syracuse. They've had tons of college game days for basketball, but not very many, or no college game days for football. So that's going to be, how college game day is. You get up early. You get up 6 a.m. and you stand out there and you just wait. I did it one year when it was Clemson, Florida State, and I vowed never to do it again because you just stand there for hours and hours and hours. And I never got caught on TV. My family never saw me. So unless you have a big giant poster board that has something crazy on it, good luck, because you're not going to get seen on TV. You're going to be one of the millions of there sitting. But that brings a lot of that excitement, a lot of that, hey, this is a big game. This is a big stage. It's time for us to prove ourselves. Okay, number 3 is that rumor has it that, a lot of people are saying, oh, this Tommy DeVito guy, he's no Eric Dungy. Yeah, you're right. He's no Eric Dungy. But the Syracuse guys that I'm talking to are saying Tommy DeVito got a better arm than Eric. Yeah, he's not going to run around like Eric, but actually, Dino Babers, this is the guy he's been wanting for a couple of years now. He's been grooming him up to this point, even in high school years, just kind of really leaning on him to come to Syracuse and build something big. And they just won 10 games. They're going to load up with this guy who's got a big arm. So a lot of the Syracuse guys are saying yes for me, or for them to have a chance. Now, here's my reasons for no. No is the guy we just talked about, Eric Dungy. 732 yards rushing. That was their number 2 running back, basically. Their quarterback was their number 2 running back, and he's gone. And they don't have a clear number 2. So, that's a big deal. Not only did they lose Eric Dungy, but they only have 2 offensive linemen returning. That's another big there. And just look back at this year. Why didn't they seal the deal against Clemson? The running game. ETN started just chewing off yards and just dominating at the end of the game. Well, guys, we just talked about Lynn J. Dixon is going to be ready to eat, and tear up the field, tear up that turf. And so I'm seeing Travis and Lynn J. tear it up. We already know that was what's successful last year. Don't you think Tony and Jeff are going to go to the well again and just run it down your throat again? Hey, last year, yeah, they did great, but you're looking at a Clemson team that was going through some off-the-field drama for the first time really in a long time, since really like maybe Sammy Watkins and the little, police incident. But, I mean, that was some big drama with Kelly Bryant. And then Trevor Lawrence got it like a stinger that they thought was kind of a concussion/stinger. So it was a weird game. Clemson pulled it out. It's not going to be that weird this year, I don't believe.
So here's a couple of things that I think about Syracuse. Okay, number 1, there is a city in the United States that has giant shiny buildings in it. It's called Las Vegas. Las Vegas is not a big believer in Syracuse. Okay, we've seen the under/over win totals on Syracuse be as low as 5.5.
No way.
Somewhere up to 6.5 so far, which is where they're seeing it. And it seems like easy money, right? That's what Vegas wants you to think. So there's a lot of people that are really smart and make money for a living following college football that are not big on Syracuse at all this year. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, I think Syracuse has a real chance to have a drop-off like Miami did from 2 years ago to last year for some very similar reasons. If you go back and look at the statistics, turnover margin, points off turnovers. Syracuse was top 5, top 6 in the country last year in all of those categories, right? That's going to be almost impossible to replicate. And this is what happened with Miami last year. They weren't getting those big turnovers in the games anymore. They weren't getting the points off the turnovers. And suddenly these close games that they had been winning the year before, they weren't winning anymore. And I'm not saying they're going to be as bad of a drop-off as Miami last year, but even if you just see regression down to the mean on turnovers for Syracuse next year, that's going to cost them 5, 6, 7 points a game. That's going to cost them some wins. So if you look 2 seasons ago with Syracuse did beat Clemson, but they ended up losing like 5 of their last 6 games after that, after Eric Dungey got hurt, right? And they had a 10-win game next season. I am not a believer in Syracuse at all this year. This, to me, feels like a team in the ACC that might be the most overhyped team in the ACC. Whoa. And then you're going to ask me the question, right, who's going to step up in the East? I don't know who's going to step up in the East, but I could easily see Syracuse losing 3 or 4 games next year. I think Clemson is going to stomp them next season up in the Carrier Dome and really send a message, because that's been the team that's kind of had their number and their goat. And there's been some weird things that have happened in the games, obviously, with the QB injuries, but I've really got Syracuse circled as a team that I think might be very overhyped next year. And I'm going to keep an eye on that. So of the 2 games that I'm worried about, I'm not really worried about either one of them, but I'm a little bit more worried about Texas A&M than I am that Syracuse game.
Wow. So you heard it first here. The most overhyped team in the ACC per Mark Childress, Syracuse, the Orange. So, put up or shut up, guys. I didn't realize that they were projected 5 or 6 wins. Like you said, Vegas is Vegas for a reason. Mm-hmm. And it's not because everybody goes there and makes millions. It's because everybody goes there and wishes they hadn't have gone. They know what they're doing. They know the spread. And I also kind of go with the S&P plus. Clemson's win probability for Texas A&M is 79%, which the lowest is 76% at South Carolina because of a rival game. We get it. But for Syracuse, 91% chance of winning.
8. Yep.
So, statistically, you and I are both stats guys. We have to go with the numbers, not emotions. That's why I don't ever bet on Clemson. I really don't bet at all. But my dad always says, don't ever bet on Clemson. Don't ever bet on your heart, because they'll disappoint you when you don't want them to. So I don't do that. But yeah, I have to agree with you. I think that they have a better quarterback, Kellen Mond, but I don't think that Kellen Mond's going to have some sort of Connor Shaw type game again. Man, that game last year, he was throwing stuff up in the 5th row, and a wide receiver was catching it and making 2 feet in. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it. He was almost sacked after being the offensive line holding the defensive line for like 10 seconds. Then they'd almost sack him, and he'd still get the ball off, and they'd go get 50 yards. It was crazy. I don't see them doing that in Death Valley, but I do see them having being more difficult game for Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tiger Group. I think I agree with you. DeVito might have that big arm, but you just 732 yards. Your number 2 rusher is your quarterback, and he's gone. And Dungey was one of those kind of guys, like a Johnny Football. You just could not squash him, like a Kellen Mond, like a Connor Shaw, like a Tim Tebow. He just not the best player in the world, but man, you just can't. They just make plays when you don't want them to make, when they least likely. But he's gone, so we'll have to see. What happens. But I agree with you. I think that you have to go with Vegas there. I know you mentioned that on your show this morning. I agree with that. Well, let's jump over to the final subject. We're in the quarter number 4. Hold up your number 4. Whoever's here watching us, we got Brett Austin, Stephanie Snyder, Al Kuhn, Jason Trammell. Welcome to the show. Ethel Childress. Lots of people watching. Welcome to the show. Jim Childress watching. Welcome to the show. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining. Hey, if you like the show, hit the blue like button. If you love the show, hit the red heart. And if you want your friends to know about this show, go ahead and share it. Let your friends know, because we're going to be here all year. We're going to keep dominating Facebook Live along with Mark Childress. If you haven't had a chance to check out Mark Childress on WCCP or on The Ring, go check it out as well too. All right, so here's the last thing. Normally we go top down, but I want to go kind of bottom up. All right, I want to leave the number 1 for last. Okay. Yep. So the question is, and you guys see it there in the banner: top 5 coaches who have frustrated Dabo the most in his career. I didn't really look at the season where he transferred, services from Tommy Bowden to Dabo. I didn't really look at that season, but basically 2009 on forward, I looked at who has frustrated the most. Now, thankfully, we don't really have to look at any coaches really in the past, couple of years. I mean, he's been dominating everybody. But there is one coach that I have on my list from the past couple of years. But so a lot of my coaches have been ones before the Deshaun Watson era, but still we're definitely very frustrating. I'm kind of giving you away my picks. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So let me start. All right, Mark. So my number 5. Okay, we're going to do number 5. We'll work our way up, and let us know who you think. Since if you don't have a top 5, let us know in the comments who has been the most frustrating opposing coach for Clemson and Dabo Swinney. All right, let us know what you think in the comments. We'll give you a shout out when you put it in there. But I'm going to go with number 5. Really, this might surprise a lot of people, but I'm going with Nick Saban. All right. Doesn't have a lot of games against him, really, to be honest. Only 4 games. It looks like they're 2-2. So record was a big deal for me. I'm going to give away my strategy here. Nick's been a tough fight, obviously, each time. I saw both of Deshaun Watson's amazing games. I traveled to those games in person. I didn't see this last year's, and I didn't see the New Orleans one. But honestly, Deshaun, I believe, other than that onside kick, man, he had that game won. And it was such a heartbreaker to have to drive back to Vegas for 4 hours after that game when he didn't win it. But I believe that it could easily been Dabo 3-1 over Nick Saban if that game would have been a little bit different. So one difference, and he jokes that in some of his things that he goes to about if I had just planned for that onside kick, And so I think I had to put him on here because, man, they have some of the best classic college football games ever when they play each other. Not to mention that Dabo is a Bama grad, which makes it even more exciting when they play each other. But my number 5 was Nick Saban. What you got?
Yeah, number 5 for me is Dave Doeren. He did have Clemson on the ropes, should have beat him in Death Valley just a couple of seasons ago. But when you say frustrate, he's frustrated a lot of the Clemson fan base, including this guy right here with his shenanigans about the laptop after the game a couple of seasons ago. They were stealing Kelly Bryant's towels the year before that. And it just seems like every time after they play Clemson that he's upset about something other than the results on the football field. And he makes excuses and does that. And Dabo's even had to kind of come back in press conferences and lay back into Dave Doeren a little bit to kind of put him back in check and put him in his place. Dave Doeren, number 5 on my list for the reasons I just said.
I love it. And I agree. I didn't put him on my top 5. I'm going to go ahead and give you that away.
I'm glad we don't have the same ones.
I put him as honorable mention. I love doing these. Every week we do these, and you feel like, man, there's nobody to pick from, or it's going to be the same 5 guys, and then it's not. So it's awesome to see. So, yeah, I did have him as an honorable mention for me, but because of the record wasn't there, I kind of stayed away from it a little bit. All right. So my number 4, I think, is another one that's more surprising. Really, I put him as number 4 because in recent history, he hasn't been frustrating really anymore. But I put Jimbo Fisher. For a little while there, man, he just dominated Dabo after he took over the reins. I think won like 3 or 4 in a row against Dabo Swinney in that time period when he first took over the reins, maybe 3 in a row. And yes, 3 straight from 2012, 2014. I got that. But he's overall 4-5. So he's lost a lot of games in the last couple of years. And then he moved over to Texas A&M and lost again. But it was a tough game. I'll give him that. And Dabo's even mentioned, he's like, I can't get rid of Jimbo Fisher. He transfers to a school that's not even in the conference, and I still have to play him. So, Dabo's a little frustrated sometimes too with having to do that. But, Brent Venable, it seems like Jimbo always finds holes in Brent Venable's defenses, and they're either like super high scoring games or really lopsided. It's just weird just how different they are from year to year. But good games, man. That Deshaun Watson game where he like nailed it to Deion Kane late in the game, going down, marching down the field. That was a classic. Hey, on the Florida State side, where they kicked that like 75-yard field goal to win, that was like a heartbreaker. There's a lot of classic games there. So Finally, though, this year is it. They probably won't see Texas A&M for 20 years, according to most experts. So this is it for Jimbo Fisher, and I gave him number 4.
Number 4 for me is a coach that is no longer coaching college football. It is Paul Johnson. If you go back and look at the list, Paul Johnson beat Dabo 4 of the first 5 times that they squared off against one another, including Dabo's first game at home when he became the interim coach. And then, of course, in that ACC title game a couple of years later, which got vacated, by the way, later by Georgia Tech. So technically Clemson won that. We could go back. But for the first 5 times that Paul Johnson played against Dabo, remember, he beat him. And there was a couple of games where they had a ton of trick plays. And then, of course, that disaster down at Grant Field when Deshaun Watson got hurt and we had all the interceptions.
Oh, yeah.
28-6 final. Just the absolute worst. And I know when you look at lately, Brent Venables seemed to solve that offense finally, and Clemson has not, really been tested by them. But I think from a frustration perspective, especially the way they lost a couple of those ball games, Paul Johnson is number 4 on my list.
Well, now we're starting to get into it. A lot of people are just jumping on me here. Can't put Jimbo at 4. Got to put Jimbo higher than number 4. So I apologize. Hey, your list is your list. Hey, like I tell people, if you don't like my list, start your own show. But if you got Jimbo Fisher higher than number 4, hey, I don't really disagree with you. I mean, he's definitely somebody that's been frustrating over the years. I was on the field with the ROTC. My friend was honored for Purple Heart. We stayed on the field. We watched him run down the hill in that college game day, and we got destroyed. I almost, that defensive end, I think it was Mario Edwards or somebody, got a fumble and ran it into the end zone for a touchdown from Taj Boyd, and he almost ran into me. If you go watch the film, you could see him like me. I'm like, oh man, because he's like 6'6" something, 300 something pounds. I was scared. But that was definitely not a good game. It was very frustrating to me. It's funny you say Paul Johnson number 4. I put in number 3. So we're going to go to number 3 for me. Overall record 4-7. I just remember that ACC championship game with C.J. Spiller coming back to seal the deal, to win the ACC. Man, he had like 5,000 yards that game, and they lost. And it was just so heartbreaking to go from the beginning of the season, hearing CJ go on the radio and say, me and Dean talked about it, about how we pulled over in a parking lot to hear CJ tell everybody that he's coming back. And then at the end of the season to lose to Georgia Tech of all teams, the frustrating option. And not only that, I looked, you mentioned that 3 times Dabo went to Atlanta, back to back, Atlanta, and lost. And it was like, what is the problem in Atlanta? And then, even with Brent Venables, he wasn't able to fix it at the beginning. And then it was like a light switch turned on. I think he turned to like of a 4-4 kind of a defense. Instead of sticking to that 4-3, maybe even like a 3-4, he switched up his front 7, and that was like the winner. Or he brought down like an Isaiah Simmons or a Dorian O'Daniel. He made like a 4 linebacker front, and that was the winner for Paul Johnson. It like destroyed him. And then, you never saw any problems with Paul Johnson after that. It was like they just couldn't get to the outside at all for Clemson. And with Dexter Lawrence's of the world, they weren't getting on the inside at all either. So I had Paul Johnson number 3.
I've got Nick Saban number 3. 2-2 record, obviously 4 games. There'll be an ESPN 30 for 30 about this era when we go back. And it looks like Dabo and Nick are actually real good friends as well, and all the tie-ins. But obviously the frustrations of the way they lost that game, you talk about with the onside kick, the frustrations of getting blown out. Blown out might be a little bit unfair, but really being manhandled physically down in New Orleans a couple of seasons ago. I think that's a very frustrating thing. If you think about it, if you take Nick Saban out of this era for Clemson, how many national titles might they have, right? And you could flip the script for Nick also. If there hadn't been this Clemson team sitting there the last 4 years, Nick might be rattling off 4 or 5 in a row at this point, because it's Alabama and Clemson up here and everybody else. And it's been like that now for at least 3, if not 4 of the last 4 seasons. So I have Nick Saban as number 3 on my list of coaches that have frustrated Dabo the most.
I don't disagree with that. If you think about it, if there's not somebody to rise to the occasion like a Dabo Swinney, you might have 5 or 6 statues of Nick Saban over there in Tuscaloosa. And you might even have a couple of statues at other stadiums just because he's been such a good coach, dominating other teams. You might just have to say, hey, we're gonna put a statue of Nick Saban because he owns us, but he definitely has been dominating, and it's interesting to see. There's always light rises to dark. I'm a Star Wars guy, so they got it. You got to join. You got to have that those teams that just compete. It's been great for college football. A lot of talk last year about it. Is it great for college football? Yes, it's great for college football to have great stories, like you said. Man, we're going to be sitting there with our grandchildren watching a 30 for 30 of Dabo and Nick and being like, I remember those days,
Mm-hmm.
All right. So my number two is I've already seen his name popped up in here. A lot of people commenting, a lot of people, Doran 3, Johnson 4, Saban. I guess I'll put Saban 5. People are saying Al Coon's getting in on this. Dean's laughing at us. Number 2, for me, a lot of people said this was their number 1, but I got a special pick for number 1. I'm holding it. Steve Spurrier. All right. It's like Voldemort. I hate saying that name. The guy that with the Darth visor, right? But he was actually, I think, 5-1 against Dabo. Dabo, not only could he not seem to really, to me, it was more Connor Shaw. He just couldn't seem to beat Connor Shaw for whatever reason. The guy was just a miracle worker against Clemson. He was very difficult to beat. And you got the 5 bomb, and are we going to get the thumb? And then you got Steve Spurrier just jabbing them in the media, just loving it. And I think those guys, man, they played golf together. So, who knows? Who knows if they hated each other or not? But they definitely played it up for the media, and I loved it. And we all loved it for sure. But the reason why I didn't put Steve Spurrier, I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of ever being a number 1 on my...
Okay. Nice.
But the other thing, I didn't want to give a Gamecock a satisfaction of being number 1 in anything. But I will tell you this. He left when he knew that it was over. Yep. And that, to me, automatic, not number 1. If you don't stick it out and let Dabo run 5 on you, just like you ran it on him, then you're a coward in my book, man. And he knew it. He stopped recruiting. He didn't have a backup plan. Dabo Swinney would never do that to this Clemson team. Hey, he's already got a tree in waiting, but people love to coach under him so much that they don't want to leave. We got a lot of guys that could be head coaches everywhere, anywhere, but they don't want to leave because they love it. And a lot like what Jeff Collins is doing, he's hiring Georgia Tech guys. Well, Dabo already knew. Hire Clemson guys. They love it here. They went here. They cherish it. They want it to do well. They want to leave a legacy. Hey, it's not rocket science. You just have to be thoughtful in the decisions that you make. And Steve Spurrier definitely wasn't towards the end of his career. Seemed like he just ran away and went to Florida to become a brand ambassador. And maybe that's good for him. A lot of people say he just was at Carolina just so he could play at Augusta National. Hey, I would love to play at Augusta National too. But I put Steve Spurrier at number 2. Great record against Dabo. Definitely frustrating, but not worthy of number 1.
Well, now I'm super curious who you have as number 1. But at number 2 for me, it was a real easy one. It's Jimbo Fisher. I really think that Dabo felt like he was going to have his breakthrough moments for this program and get to that national title level 2 seasons before it actually happened, right? And if you remember when Jameis Winston came in to Death Valley, we won't talk about that game for very long. I think that was a pivotal moment and a frustration moment, right, for the Clemson team and for Clemson Nation, because you kind of felt like, hey, this is when we're finally going to catch up with FSU and get past them. Then you turn around into Deshaun Watson's next year with Jameis being suspended for the game. And you talk about, let's have 10 things that could never go wrong in a game, all go wrong in one game, and then barely lose it. That was that game. So I look back at those 2 Clemson FSU games as being some of the most frustrating ones for Clemson Nation and for Dabo during that time, because Dabo saw very early on what he thought that he could build. And I think that he felt like he had built it to that point. I mean, Florida State comes in and blasts Clemson at Death Valley. They go on to win a national title that year. They barely squeak by Clemson down at Joe Campbell. They make the college football playoffs that year. I feel like Dabo thought that he could have been in those positions both of those years. And if they'd have beaten Florida State, they may very well have been in both of those instances. So I put him as number 2. And I'm going to go ahead and do my number 1 because I got to hear who your number 1 is. Can I do that?
All right, go ahead.
Number 1, it's very easy. And I see what you're saying, and I know why you did it the way you did. Steve Spurrier. And don't forget, you bookended. It was 5-2 against Steve. Remember, Dabo beat Steve Spurrier as an enemy.
Yeah, you're right.
And that really kind of, I think, solidified him as the coach. So thank goodness that one happened. Then, of course, the 5 years we don't talk about, and then the win on the backside. So Steve Spurrier also in the media, he and Dabo went at it a couple of times. And I feel like early in Dabo's career, not backing down. And again, was it manufactured? Maybe some of it was. I'd like to think that it was, spur of the moment, no pun intended. When he and Spurrier went back and forth a couple of times in the media, he was very there. And I almost put Rob Spence on there just because that had to be frustrating for Dabo as becoming the interim, they having to fire Rob. I didn't put him on there. But I'm very curious, who's your number one? If it's not Spurrier, who is it? I can't even fathom who you've got. So who have you got?
This is a guy that frustrated me because he's actually been, if you really look at it, he's been a key component for the other coaches beating Clemson. All right. He was a key component for Florida State destroying Clemson. All right. He was a key component.
I think
he was a key component for Georgia but Georgia beating Clemson.
Yep.
And then miraculously, on a third team, was a key component for beating Clemson at Alabama. And I really looked at that and I thought, man, that is an amazing common denominator that a specific defensive coordinator in Jeremy Pruitt, not a head coach, okay? Not a head coach.
Well, he is now, but he wasn't then.
Yeah, he is now. He wasn't a head coach at the time, and we might not see him against Tennessee, and I don't know how good he is as a head coach. But man, he's basically 3-1 against Dabo if you give him the record.
Yeah.
And what coach do you know has a winning record against Dabo? Really? I mean, I don't know.
Spurrier just about is it.
Yeah.
And, Paul Feinbaum said this week that he felt like, again, there's a different excuse every week coming out of SEC Nation about why Alabama should have beaten Clemson. But he said on his show this week, if Jeremy Pruitt were still defensive coordinator, that Alabama would have beaten Clemson this past year. So evidently he felt like 29 points would appear or disappear out of midair if Jeremy Pruitt had still been on staff for Nick Saban. So a little more credence to why you picked him number one. Good call.
Yeah, so that was my thought is, you have to be some sort of you have to know something about what works against Clemson to be able to jump to different personnels, different uniforms, different stadiums, different parts of the season, different atmospheres, different seasons, and be under a different head coach every time, but be able to master some sort of plan to beat Clemson. I think that somebody's funneling Pruitt a playbook, because I think it's just odd to me. I mean, I put him up there. Really, he's not somebody that has really been in the media that you wouldn't think. But I didn't know about the Paul Feinbaum thing. But I agree. I mean, I think Dabo has beaten Jeremy Pruitt's defense, so he can do it. But he had to do it with Deshaun Watson. I think he could do it with Trevor Lawrence too, and probably DJ as well, and some other whoever comes next. But that was my number one pick. Not a head coach, but definitely somebody who seems to just know how to stop Clemson's offense. I mean, some of the games that he played, they didn't even have like the one game he was the coach. I think in 2017 they 6 points. The blowout that we talked about, Florida State, they only had 14 points, and that was like garbage time points. Most of the game they had 7. So Jeremy Pruitt's got something. He couldn't stop Deshaun Watson by any means, but Jeremy Pruitt's got something going on there. He's got some sort of trick, and so I'm watching him. So if we schedule Tennessee anytime soon, I'm not gonna sleep on that game, because I think he's got something. I think he's got a playbook, or I think he's got some bugs in the West End Zone somewhere that he knows something that we don't know. But hey, man, that is it. That is our top 5 list of the week. Tell us what you think about the top 5 list. Dean's like, what a stretch on Jeremy Pruitt. Hey,
a lot of folks agreeing with me on here. That's all I'm going to say. There's a lot of folks agreeing with Mark's list on here, not as many agreeing with Morgan's list.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
it's a bold call, and I like what you did with number 1. Seriously.
I'm just trying to be different, man. I'm just trying to spice it up for you. If it was always what you expected, you'd never watch the show. So, Eric, So true. I hate Feinbaum. Dean Cox, he says, I'm stretching it a little bit. Well, hey, I will go back. Let's redact Jimbo Fisher. You brought up a lot of bad memories. Let's throw him number 2, No, I'm just kidding. But hey, Mark, a lot of people know you. A lot of people know how to have seen you before. But just in case they've been living under a rock and don't love Clemson football somehow, but don't know how to catch you on Twitter, don't know how to follow you on Facebook, don't know how to check you out on WCCP, tell our fans how to check you out, and then we'll sign off.
Yep. Hey, you can follow me on Twitter at Childress Mark. The Mark Childress Show is on WCCP FM, The Roar. That's 105.5 here in upstate South Carolina, Saturday mornings from 9 to 12. You can also catch me on The Ring Monday nights at 7 o'clock. You can go on Facebook and follow the show there. It also runs live on the WCCP FM The Roar Facebook page. And some big changes coming for The Ring. Big time changes. You're not going to want to miss it once football season gets started. You guys are going to be really impressed with that. You can also see me popping up on your television on WSPA Channel 7. I fill in for the sportscasts on there on a regular basis. I'll be on there, let's see, a week from Sunday night. You can check me out there. So, hey, Morgan, anytime you'll have me back. It was an honor being here, man. Really had a good time. I'm a big fan of you personally. I'm a big fan of your show. Can't wait to see what you do with this in the upcoming football season, man.
I appreciate it. Likewise to you as well. I look forward to hearing you more on the radio and on The Ring and see what's new coming up. This is the problem with having 2 hosts. I just don't have a yes. I should have got a yes man because we're gone way over time limit. Because we just love it.
That's what matters.
But great content. If you didn't get a chance, if you're just logging in now and you missed the live show, I'm going to put up a lot of clips in the following next couple of days. Check out our YouTube page. It's growing a ton. We're almost at 200 subscribers now. So go check it out. The Morgan Thomas Show over there. We got a custom URL. So go check that out. Clips will be there. Clips will be here on Facebook. So check us out. And as always, Tiger fans, not many days left till football season, but we'll see you at the top of the hill.